Hi, I'm George Crump, lead analyst for Storage Switzerland. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're at Qumulo's office in Seattle, Washington. Makes sense at this point to really do a deep dive on the Qumulo technology and architecture. And joining me today is Ben Gitenstein. He is the VP of Product at Qumulo. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Great, thanks for having me.
So why don't you take us through it? What makes Qumulo so special?
So, we build file products. That's what we do here at Qumulo. And we believe in file for a pretty simple reason. Data powers humanity's mission by powering innovation.
Okay.
And data, especially unstructured data, is best managed as file. We're really strong believers in that. We're real big file people here at Qumulo.
Okay.
And the problem is that starting in about 2010, file really lost its way. The people who make file products really took their eye off the ball. Okay. And that led to a couple problems for customers out in the world who do really important work with file.
Well, that's actually interesting because what a bad time to take your eye off the ball when the whole unstructured thing was exploding. When I started in this industry, it was all about Oracle databases and how fast could you make them.
That's right.
And now nobody even cares, right? It's all about unstructured data.
That's right. And what really happened, well, two things happened at the same time. First, unstructured data got bigger and more important. So whether you're making a movie or sequencing a genome or discovering the next cure for cancer or designing the next really important, economic model, all of those concepts, all of those businesses are fueled by unstructured data, which is really best managed as file. Okay. So when those file products lost their way, it happened for a couple reasons. First, a lot of the makers of those file products got bought. Right. They got bought by big companies that treated them as a member of a portfolio and stopped investing in them. Their job was to generate cash, not innovate.
Yeah, makes sense.
Second problem was they got really distracted by object. So object systems became very interesting, and object was a technology that does have its role, but it was brought over into file workloads in ways that really don't make sense for customers. Okay. And the third problem was they got real scared of the cloud. They treated the public cloud as a terrifying enemy. Okay. And they didn't treat it as a new operating environment to unleash on behalf of customers.
Sounds like a perfect storm.
Yeah, it really led to some real problems. So, when Qumulo set out, we really wanted to tackle that head on. Okay. In particular, we really wanted to tackle 4 or 5 problems that we were really interested in. Okay. First, how do you make a file system that scales really, really well?
Right. Obviously, that's huge now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's huge not just in terms of the capacity you're going to, because you can make file products pretty big now, but the number of things in the file system. Right. Billions and billions of files, which was one of the reasons people thought you had to leave file and go to object, which is just inaccurate. Okay. Qumulo is a fundamental believer that that's wrong. Okay. The second thing we really wanted to tackle was the problem of visibility. When you make a bucket, if you put lots of stuff in the bucket and you don't give people visibility into the bucket, then they're only left with one of 2 options: either empty the bucket or buy a bigger bucket. Right? Yeah. And we want to be in the business of helping you buy the smallest bucket possible to get your job done.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
The third thing we were really interested in was control. Customers, especially storage admins, are under relentless pressure to automate, to monitor, to understand, to measure, and to control their infrastructure. We really wanted to make that possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a big issue right now because if I ask an IT professional or CIO, hey, how many files do you have? They don't know, or a lot is the answer, right? That's not really a great answer. Right?
Yeah, that's a really hard way to run your business. Yeah. In fact, if you really wanted to get an answer, you'd run a job, you'd wait a week. Yeah. Wait to get the answer back, by which time you've added more files to the system.
Your data's out of date.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we control was also really important to us, along with visibility. Then we really wanted to enable customers to take advantage of the best of the commodity hardware ecosystem. So whether it's standard hardware built by OEMs like HPE or Dell, or all the great innovations that's coming from Intel and Western Digital, we wanted to make sure that customers get all of that value really, really fast. Okay. Right. As soon as those products are available, we want to put those into our customers' hands.
That makes sense.
And then the last thing is we wanted to help our customers take advantage of the public cloud. So we believe file has a real role in the public cloud because file data is so important, and the public cloud offers so many great innovation possibilities, and we want to make that available to large at-scale file buyers.
Well, that's a really interesting technique, right? Because as you said, most of the other NAS guys were running away from the cloud, not embracing it. Right?
Yeah. In our business, there's really 2 things that are hard to tackle. There's technology and there's business models. Yeah. And when your technology is not aligned with a trend,
Right.
you can change the technology. When your business model is not aligned with a trend, you're in a real pickle.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with all that, that's what led us to build the product that we have today.
Okay, well, take us through it.
Yeah, so what I thought I'd do is talk through how the hardware works,
Okay.
whether that hardware is on premises or in the public cloud,
Okay.
and then we'll crack open a node and we'll look at what the software does.
Sounds great.
Okay, so it's a node-based architecture,
Uh-huh.
right? It's the basic unit is a node. You start with 4, and then whenever you want to make the namespace bigger or add more performance, you just add another node. So it just grows out like this, right? And across all of this stuff, I should say, is just one big namespace. So we'll call this your Q drive. Everything at Qumulo has to have a Q in it.
That makes sense.
Inside one of these nodes, if you crack it open, what you'll find is first you'll find a NIC. That's your network. Then your compute. Those two things together give you your front-end performance,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
And then underneath that is storage. So we have 2 variants. There's an all-flash, an all SSD variant that's all NVMe.
Okay.
And then there's a hybrid variant, which is SSD in front of disk.
Okay.
So that's what my breakdown here looks like.
Are one selling over the other? Or is it about the same? Is it?
Well, about a year ago, I would have told you the world looked mostly like flash and disk hybrid.
Okay.
Boy, is that changing fast.
Okay.
And it's really, simply put, it's because flash drives are coming down so rapidly in price.
Yeah.
And because we made the decision to build our flash product based around NVMe architectures, we're really well positioned with where the rest of the industry is going because everything's going NVMe.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
So you crack this thing open and you find our software. So let's look inside. At the very bottom layer is Linux. So we run on top of a standard, well-supported, long-term support variant of Linux,
Okay.
and Ubuntu distribution. And then on top of that is our product itself. All of
Okay.
that runs in user space over this thing, which gives us a ton of flexibility and
Okay.
portability. And that flexibility and portability comes from really 2 things. First, as we talked about, this is Linux. The second thing you'll notice is never in here did I mention NVRAM. And that's a really fundamentally important differentiator in architecture because there's 2 places you're never going to find NVRAM. First, in commodity hardware.
Right.
Second, you're never going to find it in the cloud.
Yeah.
So architectures that assume NVRAM are fundamentally limited. Architectures that don't have a lot of flexibility and openness to them.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right?
Mhm.
So let's crack the software open and take a look at it.
Okay.
The top layer is the protocols because the protocols are really the front door to any NAS or file system product, right?
Okay. Makes sense.
There's really 2 types of protocols that we need to think about. The first are our authentication protocols,
Okay.
and the second are our access protocols.
Okay.
So authentication, we support all the enterprise-grade authentication systems that you would expect. Active Directory or AD, LDAP, and then we have our own local user model.
Okay.
We also offer multiple ways for customers to map between those things because what we found in the world of file and in as you move into the heart of the customer's data center is that they have increasingly complex authentication systems that need to work with each other.
Sure, that makes sense.
It's also really true that this is one of the powers of file. File has a really rich ecosystem of management systems that around identity and access,
Yeah.
and you really got to respect those
Yeah,
things.
that makes sense.
Access, we support NFS, SMB, FTP, and then we have also our own RESTful API. And as we talk about control, it's really important to talk about our API because one of the fundamental things and fundamental decisions we made as a company is that we are API first in everything.
Okay.
So every feature we build, even down to every little element of our UI, has an API first for it, and then we release the GUI on top of it.
So that means anything I can do from the GUI, I naturally can do through the API. So.
Yeah, if you would like to, you are more than welcome to go recreate our UI using our APIs.
Okay.
If you want to spend a really long weekend.
Yeah. I think it might take me 2.
There you go. You can also read, write, and change data and permissions over our API,
Okay.
which is something that separates us from other products.
Cool.
Beneath that is the file system itself. Now, in the file system, you've got several big blocks of value. The first is visibility. So one of our claims to fame and one of the most important pieces of Qumulo's heritage is real-time data awareness, real-time understanding of what's going on in your system. We embed that into the file system itself. It's not a layer on top. It's not a separate product that runs off to the side. It's built into the file system.
And I would assume that's important too, so that performance isn't impacted.
That's right. The trick with providing visualizations and analytics at the scale at which we operate is to be able to do so when billions of files are in the system, when you've got hundreds of connections and gigabytes of seconds of throughput going on, or millions of IOPS,
Sure.
right? How do you do all of that in real time, not fall behind, and not get in the way of the traffic?
Right.
The answer is you build it into the file system itself, and you use really efficient data structures like B trees and other things to make sure that everything works really at high scale very efficiently.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. We offer two types of visibility that are really important for customers to know about. The first is capacity analytics. So that's answering the question of, hey, I left work on Friday, I had 100 terabytes free, came back on Monday, I had 20 terabytes free.
What happened?
Yeah. What's going on? My
Yeah.
boss is going to want to know.
Right.
And we can do that on any directory size, no matter how many files in the system, with just a click. And it's always up to date within 15 seconds.
Gotcha.
So there's no week-long tree walks in there.
Okay.
The second type of analytics is all around performance. So this goes back to the question of, I got a call from one of my end users and quote, the storage is slow.
Right.
Right? This is the dreaded call that any storage admin gets.
Sure.
Because how do you diagnose that? How do you understand that?
Yeah.
So with our system, you can understand which directories are getting the most attention, which IP addresses are hitting the cluster the hardest, all those things, which give you a real-time sense for what's going on.
That's good. That's good.
So that's the file system visibility. The next big benefit in here, of course, is permissions. So when you manage customers' data, you're fundamentally managing who has access to it.
Right.
It's our belief that one of the most important things that we can do as a company is to provide enterprise-grade, really rich permissions models, and to make sure that those models work across a multi-protocol system.
Gotcha.
Right? And so that's why this layer is separate from this layer.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we put permissions here at the file system layer. And then also it's why we spent a long time and a lot of R&D energy and built a lot of IP around mapping an NFS identity and an SMB identity. So you've got a user who comes in on their Linux machine and does work, and then you got a compute node that comes in over SMB
Right.
on Windows or vice versa,
Right.
and they're both accessing the same data. How do you manage identity across that?
Right.
Right.
And so you guys have essentially built that into the file system.
Absolutely.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
No configuration needed. It just
Gotcha.
works right out of the box. And then the last thing is file system data protection. So this is snapshots, quotas, replication, and then of course DR.
Okay.
So we always recommend to customers that they own multiple copies of their data in several locations to protect against data center events or disasters or whatever else.
Sure.
And we have a really well developed failover and failback disaster recovery product built
Okay.
built
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then of course the last layer is the protection system. So one big question in file systems is how do you take advantage underneath this thing or up here in the hardware, how do you take advantage of an 8 terabyte drive, then a 10 terabyte drive, then a 14 terabyte drive? Because at the end of the day, all of those drives, as they get more dense, what they're doing is they're creating better economics for customers.
Sure.
How do you do that and still be able to recover from the inevitable, which is hardware dying? That's
Right.
what hard drives like to do. They like to die,
Yeah,
right?
and you don't want to be in a recovered state for a week.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. More to the point, you don't want to be in a recovered state for a week and then have to manage a really complicated engine for what gets recovered and what gets failed and what gets replaced and whatnot.
point,
The
yeah.
system just needs to work.
Yeah.
So what we built is what we call a virtual protection space. So these
Okay.
are called, sometimes if you'll talk to some of our engineers, they'll talk about block stores and protection stores, right?
Okay.
Simply put, we take the entire virtual space of this cluster
Okay.
and we divide it into very even chunks, like this. And then, instead of protecting your data at the file system level,
Mhm.
we protect it at the protection system layer,
Okay.
right? So these are essentially contiguous blocks laid out across disks. Each one of these is a 4K block,
Okay.
and then we group those 4K blocks into a protection group. This is where erasure coding happens in our product.
Okay.
The benefit for customers is really twofold, and it's pretty straightforward. The first is, if you look at file system efficiency, so we'll call this file efficiency, over file size, in most storage products, it works like this.
Okay.
Small files are protected worse than larger files. And if you have lots and lots of small files, as most customers do these days,
Right.
you're paying a pretty large tax.
To
Right.
to protect them.
To protect them.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is very simple. It's because they do all their protection at the file system layer.
Right.
Qumulo doesn't do that. We protect at the block layer, which means that your file system efficiency always looks like this.
Consistency is good, right?
Consistency is good.
Yep. Makes sense.
So that's the protection system. And then, of course, all of that runs on Linux. So makes upgrades really easy, really fast, and it makes it easy for us to deliver new software every 2 weeks.
The upgrade is interesting because I was just going to ask you that this is this is very modular, and so I would think it allows you to fix things and go through things a lot quicker just because of that modularity. You can focus on one aspect or the other, right?
That's right. That's right. Our engineers love that. We spend a lot of time making sure that all of these layers are really well gapped between each other, so that it's really easy to add new protocols. It's really easy to add new file system features.
Right.
It's also really easy, and for the engineers in the audience, they might care about this. It's really easy to do very specific granular testing of features at the lowest possible level.
Gotcha.
Which is the best way to guarantee data protection and safety.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, when we started the conversation, you talked about kind of how the state of the market is and
Yeah.
how kind of the NAS guys have almost retreated. Talk about how different you are versus your competitors.
Yeah, great. So there's a couple places where this really stands out in the minds of customers. The first is this entire system gives a tremendous amount of choice to customers around platforms and flexibility and where they want to run this.
Sure.
Right, so you can run our product on a variety of HPE hardware. You can run it on Dell, and you can run it on a variety of options from us.
Okay.
Right, which is a great amount of choice.
Sure.
It also gives you the ability to run this on premises or in the cloud.
Right.
And as opposed to this product being a different variant in the cloud that has less features or a different UI, it's exactly the same product.
Okay.
Which means that when we add a new file system feature, that file system feature accrues value both to the cloud product and the on-premises product.
Well, and it would seem to me you also are taking advantage of all the good things of the cloud, like the almost unlimited access to compute and things like that because you're
That's
so
right.
scalable.
That's absolutely right. So when cloud customers use us, or when customers use us in the cloud, what they find is they can serve really, really large-scale compute workloads with a very small amount of Qumulo and get a ton of value really fast.
Okay.
And that enables them to unlock things in the cloud they couldn't do before, like elasticity, global reach, totally amazing higher-level services like AI and ML, all that sort of stuff.
Great.
And then, the last thing that really sets us apart, there's two more really. The first is this visibility layer offers a window into your storage that customers really have never had before. And it often makes them ask a bunch of really tough and interesting questions about their workload and about how they've been doing things. And then, of course, the last thing is this is an enterprise-grade file product,
Right.
which just takes a long time to get right so that customers really feel like they can rely on you.
Sure, sure.
That's a point of pride for us.
Okay, great. Well, before we close out the video, why don't you tell us a little bit about Qumulo just from a background? And
Sure.
You've obviously been here a while. But before we get to that, I got to talk about this thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a backstory on that?
So this is the Grumquat.
Okay.
Everybody at Qumulo's got a little bit of a different story about what the Grumquat means to them and why the Grumquat is grumpy.
Okay.
So here's why the Grumquat is grumpy for me. The Grumquat's grumpy for two reasons. First of all, the Grumquat looks at existing file products and just thinks, that's not good enough. He is just frustrated on behalf of customers.
There you go.
So he wants something better for them.
Okay.
And then, the other thing about the Grumquat, the other reason he's frustrated is the Grumquat is never satisfied with Qumulo's product. The Grumquat always wants us to do better.
Okay.
And so we're always looking at the Grumquat being like, did I make him proud? No, probably not. I can do better.
So he's a bit of a taskmaster. Then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The Grumquat is, he's a tyrant.
Oh, there you go.
But
All right. So let's give the folks just some background on Qumulo. I mean, you guys aren't 3 months old. You've been at this for, I think, 7 years now, right?
That's right. That's right. We're going into our 8th year. We, we've got hundreds of customers in verticals ranging from media and entertainment to life sciences to manufacturing to commercial IoT to hospitals. We are in lots of different verticals. We are all over the world now. We've got major presences all over North America and EMEA, and then we're opening up other theaters throughout the rest of the world.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks so
it.
much.
There you go. I'm George Crump, lead analyst for Storage Switzerland. Thank you for joining us.